Today, I want to talk about critical theory, which has been a key component of postmodernist and cultural Marxist movements of the current era. I'm not going to go through an exhaustive description of critical theory or of its history, but I think it is important to provide a brief description. The term, in the more narrow sense, refers to the practice of various European philosophers and social theorists in the Western European Marxist tradition, though in a broader sense it encompasses much of postmodernism and cultural Marxism, including third-wave feminism, which promote a radical transformation of modern society. Max Horkheimer was a key figure in the early days of the philosophical movement, which came to be known as critical theory. He was the director of the Institute for Social Research in Frankfurt, Germany, which is where the theory developed and which led to the application of the term the Frankfurt School to the early critical theorists. The critical theorists claimed that their aim is human emancipation and liberation, as they seek to use knowledge gained from social science to help guide them and allow them to identify systems of domination and oppression to be eradicated. I find the approach of the critical theorists, including the original academic critical theorists, but more so the pseudo-intellectual critical theorists of today promoting third-wave feminism and cultural Marxism, to be far too ambitious, with theories far too simplistic and all-encompassing to be of much value. I have 5 main points of contention. 1. Most of human social experience is composed of a process of interpretation. There are an infinite number of ways to interpret any social interaction, an infinite number of contexts one can imagine for any communication, and out of these, critical theorists, in their quest to find unjust domination and oppression everywhere, urge people to interpret certain types of interactions as being as hostile as possible, leading to unnecessary conflict. 2. There are an infinite number of levels of analysis possible, with greater knowledge and intellectual rigor necessary to support the higher levels. So to develop a basis for common understanding, a lower or simple level of analysis is necessary so as to create the preconditions for getting most of the population on the same page, so we can work together harmoniously to move forward to a better life. The critical theorists choose whatever level of analysis that is necessary to allow them to find the greatest amount of domination and oppression to justify their approach, which makes it impossible for the majority to ever get on the same page to develop common understandings and create social harmony. Also, it appears that as they search through levels of depth to find perspectives that emphasize and promote division to fit their narrative, the process itself, by putting people on different pages, helped to create division, which is what they fed off of. 3. The critical theorists choose race, gender, and sexuality as the ways to group people for the purposes of determining domination or oppression, when wealth is obviously a much better indication of one's power to oppress or dominate others. This helps to explain some of the success of the critical theorists, as the wealthy elite found this way of grouping people much less threatening than the traditional Marxists' focus on wealth, and possibly even beneficial to their interests, as it tends to divide, distract, and confuse the common people. As people are small group animals trying to live in a large group, they tend to identify with the constructed subgroups because that gives them more of the emotional connection they seek. But it all does more harm than good when the groupings keep us from living together harmoniously. The critical theorists not only ignore the most important indicator of power to dominate when choosing their groupings, but also appear to maximize the amount of disharmony and conflict produced. 4. There have always been 2 kinds of rules in any large human group. A, those that serve the elites who make the rules, in other words, the oppressive rules, and B, those that serve the needs of the general society, improving the general welfare, in other words, the utilitarian rules. Type B rules were always necessary to increase stability and social sustainability, as well as to provide security against outside threats that could affect everyone in the group. Note that improving the general welfare would have been desirable for elites because that would mean greater prosperity and greater wealth, which the elites could take advantage of. The critical theorists appear to foolishly believe that all or virtually all rules fit into A, rules intended to benefit only those who make them. No system could last very long following that method, and it certainly could not flourish the way Western civilization has. 5. The approach of the critical theorists is completely inflexible and does not adapt to a changing social climate. Feminism in Western society has become a powerful force and has molded new rules that provide any number of advantages to women and girls. But critical theorists ignore this and assume they are as powerless and oppressed as they were a century ago. One of the most disadvantaged groups today is that of boys who grow up with single mothers, without fathers in the home as a result of choices of the boys' mothers, and as a result have much higher rates of becoming dropouts, incarcerated, suicide victims, unemployed, homeless, depressed, afflicted with mental illness, and drug abusers. The critical theorists do not even recognize these boys or young men as being oppressed or victims and have no solutions for them. The net effect of the efforts of the critical theorists appears to be to create more division, disharmony, and conflict among the common people, and to jettison most of the utilitarian rules that provide for the general welfare, while leaving alone most of the rules that wealthy and powerful elites design to further their own interests. This abandonment of long-standing utilitarian rules creates social chaos that harms non-elites far more than it harms elites, and creates an even greater power differential and even more oppression, the opposite of what is intended by the short-sighted and grandiose approach of critical theory, which appears to have evolved into a form of poison to human society.